The heat came early in Pine Hollow that morning. The kind of stifling, airless heat that made the sky look bleached and the ground crack underfoot. But Clara McGraw had been up long before the sun, hauling water from the old well to the withering vegetable rows that lined the southern edge of her father's farm. Her arms shook with every trip. Her palms were already raw, the skin rubbed open by the rough hemp handles of the buckets. The sweat soaked through her thin, patched dress, clinging to her bones. Jasper, the old mule, stood in the shade of the oak tree, watching. Clara didn't look up. She never did anymore. Her eyes stayed down, away from the porch, where Eli McGraw sat with his chipped coffee mug, booted feet propped on the railing. He didn't miss a thing. "Move it, girl," he barked. "Them tomatoes ain't gonna water themselves." His voice sliced through the humid morning like a saw blade. Clara flinched, spilling water on her bare feet as she stumbled over a rock. Her breath hitched, but she didn't cry out. Crying only made things worse. Crying made him say she was weak, just like her mother. She was 16, but she carried herself like someone much older. Her back was already starting to stoop from the strain of 2 years of labor, ever since her mother collapsed in that same garden. Dead by dusk. Eli told folks it was a fever, but Clara had seen the truth. The blood on her mother's fingers from scrubbing, the sunken eyes, the trembling hands. Now it was Clara's turn, and she was expected to build character just like her mother had. Jasper flicked his tail, swatting away a fly. His big ears twitched. Eli stood from his chair, coffee forgotten, and started down the steps. He held that old strap in his hand, the one he'd used more times than Clara could count. The one that hung behind the door like a shadow. "You slop another drop of that water," he growled, "and I'll remind you how much a mistake costs round here." Clara's knees buckled. She didn't cry out, she didn't speak. She simply fell, her legs giving out beneath her like a puppet with its strings cut. The buckets hit the ground, spilling the last of their contents into the dust. The thud of her body was soft but final. For a moment everything went still. Eli's face turned red. The strap lifted. Then came the sound that no one in Pine Hollow would forget. Not the snap of leather, not Clara's fall, but the sound of Jasper's hooves thundering across the dry earth. It wasn't a trot. It wasn't a stubborn mule's amble. It was a full-out, determined charge. "Whoa! Hey!" Eli backed up, raising the strap instinctively. But Jasper wasn't aiming to pass. He skidded to a stop between Clara and her father, ears pinned flat, nostrils flaring. His chest rose and fell with steady force. He didn't blink. Eli gawked. "You crazy beast, get back!" He lashed the strap toward Jasper's face. Jasper's head darted forward. His teeth snapped down on the strap midair, jerking it from Eli's hand like it was nothing more than a twig. Eli stumbled back 2 steps, startled. Clara stirred in the dirt, moaning. One eye cracked open. What she saw didn't make sense. Not at first. Jasper, standing over her, guarding her like some kind of 4-legged sentinel. His hooves planted firm, his body tense like he'd seen 1,000 battles and was ready for one more. Eli recovered quickly. "You've lost it," he spat. "Damn mule's gone rabid." He turned back toward the porch, toward the rifle leaning against the post. "No." Clara's voice was barely a whisper, her throat dry and cracked. "No." Jasper shifted, watching Eli with razor focus. His body moved in front of Clara again as Eli reached for the rifle. "You touch that gun and I swear—" Clara started, then coughed hard, nearly retching from dehydration. Eli didn't listen. He gripped the barrel. Jasper saw it. Before Eli could lift it, Jasper lunged, teeth snapping around the metal, wrenching the rifle downward with brutal force. The barrel groaned, bent at an unnatural angle. Eli pulled. Jasper pulled harder. The gun slipped from Eli's hands and hit the ground. Jasper raised a hoof and crushed it. The trigger snapped clean off. Clara gasped. Eli's face went pale, not from pain, from something else. Recognition, fear. "You little witch," he hissed at Clara. "You've turned him against me." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew it wasn't true. Jasper didn't belong to Clara, not really. He had been her mother's mule, bought cheap from a neighbor who thought the beast was too dull to train. Her mother had fed him apples from her hand, talked to him like a person, even sewn a blanket for his stall when the winter winds came. He hadn't made a sound when she died. Not until now. Clara sat up slowly, one hand on the mule's leg, the other pressed to her throbbing temple. "You saw," she whispered, looking up at him. "Didn't you, Jasper? You've seen everything." Jasper didn't move, didn't blink, but he was listening. Eli stood there, shoulders heaving, face dark with rage and something else. Humiliation. He wasn't just losing control of his daughter. He was losing control of the narrative. "This ends now," Clara rasped. "No more straps, no more buckets before sunrise. I'm not your housekeeper. I'm not your replacement wife. I'm your daughter." Jasper stomped once, just one solid thud that shook the ground beneath them. The sound was punctuation. Eli stared at them both for a long, terrible moment, and then muttered something under his breath as he turned and walked back toward the porch, hands shaking, his world beginning to slip through his calloused fingers. Behind him, Jasper didn't move. Not an inch. He stayed right there in the dirt, in the sun, in the silence, between the girl and the man who had forgotten how to be a father. And for the first time in 2 years, Clara didn't feel alone. The next morning came heavy with silence. No barking orders, no sound of boots stomping the porch boards, just wind curling through the brittle cornstalks and the faint creak of the barn door Clara hadn't latched the night before. She lay still on the floor of the hayloft, where she'd dragged herself after Jasper refused to leave her side. Her head ached, her lips were cracked, but her heart felt strange. Not lighter, no, just more awake, like someone had shaken the dust from her soul. Below her, Jasper snorted softly. He hadn't moved far all night, standing just under the rafters like a sentry. Clara sat up slowly, feeling every bruise, every strain in her limbs. She peeled back a loose board beneath the stacked hay, reached into the hollow space and pulled out a worn bundle of folded paper. Her journal. Half-written thoughts scrawled on the backs of old receipts, torn notebook pages, anything she could salvage without Eli noticing. Her plan to escape, her memories of Mama, and her anger, pages and pages of it. Rage she'd never dared to speak out loud. But someone had been here. The bundle was messier than she'd left it. The top page, the one where she'd written, "He's not my father, he's just the man who punishes me for breathing," was gone. Clara's breath caught. She climbed down the ladder and peeked around the barn. Eli's truck was gone. The porch was empty. Jasper followed her with his eyes, but didn't move. Her heart beat louder than her footsteps as she crept toward the chicken coop. She pushed aside the stacked feed sacks and pulled up the loose floorboard. The tin can she'd buried her emergency money in was still there. $327 in bills, mostly crumpled 5s and 1s from selling eggs to travelers. Clara exhaled. He hadn't found this yet. The sound of tires crunching gravel made her spin. Eli's truck was back, but he wasn't alone. A second car pulled in behind him, a white veterinary truck with Dr. Lydia Morris painted on the side. Clara ducked behind the henhouse as Eli and the vet stepped out. Lydia was tall, dark-skinned, her hair tied back in a bun that had loosened with sweat and road dust. She looked sharp, observant. Eli was pacing, talking too fast. "I think he's sick. Kicked at me. Bit the strap clean off, might be rabies or he's gone crazy." Clara's stomach twisted. "He's had his vaccines," Lydia said calmly. "You keep him up to date, don't you?" Eli didn't answer. "I'll take a look," Lydia added. "But animals don't go mad overnight, Mr. McGraw. They respond to something." Clara waited until they disappeared into the barn before creeping back toward the kitchen. Her journal had to be in the house. She couldn't let him destroy it. She slipped through the side door, barefoot on creaky floorboards. The house smelled like mildew and bitter coffee. She moved fast, checked under the couch cushions, inside the coat closet, beneath the floor vent in her old room. Nothing. Then she saw the wood stove. A pile of charred paper lay in the ashtray. She dropped to her knees. The top piece hadn't burned fully. Her handwriting curled across it in smeared pencil. "I dream of trains. Not because I love the sound, but because they go away." Her stomach turned. Outside, she heard Lydia's voice again, sharper now. "You want him sedated?" "Temporarily, just long enough to load him into the trailer. I've got a buyer out near Hot Springs. Big land, real quiet. Good for him. But I want him gone today." Clara ran. Jasper was tied loosely to the stall rail, but the tension in his body made him look like a coiled spring. His ears twitched before she even reached him. She grabbed the rope. "We're not letting him take you." "Clara?" Lydia's voice cut through the barn's shadows. "Is that you?" Clara froze. Lydia stepped forward slowly. She didn't look surprised. Her eyes went from Clara's dirt-smeared dress to the red marks on her arms, to the way Jasper stood between them. "I'm not here to hurt you," Lydia said gently. "Or him." Clara hesitated. "Then don't let him take Jasper. I'm a vet. Not the law, but I've seen animals lash out. They don't pick sides unless someone makes them choose." Clara swallowed hard. "He's choosing me." Lydia nodded slowly. "That tells me everything I need to know." She turned, calling out toward the house. "Mr. McGraw, I need to check something on the mule's hind leg. Might be serious." Eli muttered something about getting gloves and disappeared inside. Lydia stepped in close. "Untie him, quietly. Let him go." Clara's fingers worked fast. Jasper didn't flinch. As the rope slipped free, he turned and trotted straight out of the barn, head high, like he knew exactly where to go. "Take him to the lower field," Clara whispered. "Hide behind the hay bales." Jasper vanished like a ghost into the tree line. Clara turned to Lydia, hands trembling. "Why'd you help?" Lydia glanced toward the house, her voice tight. "Because 10 years ago someone helped me." Clara didn't ask more. She just nodded. That night, under the blanket of stars and mosquito buzz, Clara climbed into the hayloft again. Jasper was already there, curled in the shadows, chewing lazily like none of the day had happened. She leaned against his warm side and whispered, "You're not just a mule, are you?" Jasper let out a slow exhale and rested his heavy head near her lap. "Everyone thinks you're dumb, but I think you've been watching. Waiting." Her voice cracked. "I think you were Mama's only friend at the end. I think you knew before I did that something had to change." She reached into the back wall of the loft and pulled out a fresh page. She began to write again, but this time not about escape. This time she wrote about fighting back. The sun had barely crested the trees when Clara stepped barefoot into the yard, her jaw tight. the ache in her limbs no longer from exhaustion, but from decision. For the first time in years, she wasn't carrying buckets. She wasn't waiting for orders. She wasn't hiding. She was done hiding. Jasper stood a few yards behind her, near the rusted gate. His head was high, ears flicking forward at every movement. Watching. Waiting. The same way he had the day Mama died. Eli sat on the porch as usual, boots up, mug in hand. He didn't look up at first, not until Clara walked right into the middle of the yard and stopped, her feet planted, spine straight, chin raised. "You didn't feed the chickens," he said flatly, not lowering his mug. "I'm not feeding them today," she replied, her voice steady. He blinked, as if unsure he'd heard right. "What was that?" "I said no." The word dropped like a stone into the space between them, heavy and final. Eli slowly set the mug down. "You're getting awful bold, girl." Clara didn't move. "I'm not your girl anymore." Eli stood. His boots thudded hard across the porch floor. "You better watch your tone. You forget whose roof you're under?" "I didn't forget," she said, "but you seem to have forgotten I'm not a plow, or a bucket, or a ghost of Mama you get to command." His face darkened. "You shut your mouth." "No," Clara said again. "You buried Mama in that field like she was just another chore. Then you buried me under everything she left behind." Eli's fists clenched. "One more word, Clara." "What?" she snapped. "You'll hit me? With what? That strap Jasper chewed up? Or will you grab the broken rifle? The one he crushed under his hoof like it was nothing?" Her voice rose, a raw edge scraping through her throat. "You buried the woman who loved you. And now you've tried to bury the daughter who reminded you she was ever here." Jasper moved. He didn't gallop this time. He walked, steady and sure, placing himself between Clara and Eli once again, a wall of muscle, intelligence, and fury that didn't need language to speak volumes. "Get out of the way," Eli barked at him. Jasper didn't budge, not an inch. Clara stepped closer. Her voice lowered, but her words cut deeper. "You know she didn't die of fever, don't you?" Eli's lips pressed into a thin line. "You told the neighbors what they needed to hear, that she was sick. But I saw her, Daddy. I saw her fall, right there by the wash bin. I saw her hands bleeding, her knees shaking, her mouth whispering prayers through cracked lips while you sat on that porch drinking coffee." "She never said she was hurting," Eli muttered. "She never said anything," Clara shot back. "Just like I didn't, because we both knew what would happen if we did." Eli took a step forward, but Jasper matched him. A low, guttural noise rumbled from the mule's throat. Not quite a growl. Mules didn't growl, but it felt like a warning all the same. "You think I wanted any of this?" Eli snapped, eyes glassy now. "Think I asked to raise a daughter by myself? I lost everything the day she died." "So did I," Clara whispered. "But I didn't become a monster because of it." Eli opened his mouth, then shut it again. Clara stepped around Jasper just enough to let her father see her fully, not hiding behind the mule, not trembling. "If you touch me again," she said, voice like steel wrapped in softness, "you'll have to go through him first." Jasper's body shifted, like he was bracing for a blow that wouldn't come. Eli looked at the two of them, his own blood, and the beast that had served him without question for 15 years, and for the first time he looked unsure. Not angry, just lost. "You think you're grown now," he muttered, voice low. "I became grown the day you told me school was a waste," Clara replied. "The day you made me dig Mama's grave because grieving was a luxury. The day you looked at me and saw everything you hated about the world." Eli staggered back like she'd slapped him. "I was trying to teach you to be strong," he said, No, she said. You were teaching me to disappear. A long silence followed. The chickens clucked nervously from their coop. Wind rustled through the dead cornstalks. In the distance, a hawk cried out over the pines. Eli looked down at his hands, rough and scarred, then back at Clara's. Smaller, but just as scarred. I didn't mean for this to happen, he said. But it did, Clara answered, and now you have a choice. His eyes lifted slowly. What choice? To keep burying things or to start digging them up? Behind her, Jasper finally relaxed, letting out a long breath as he lowered his head to graze. But his ears stayed alert, just in case. I've been planning to leave, Clara said quietly. I've got money saved. Aunt Ruth wrote me back. Eli's face tightened. I was going to go, she continued. I was ready. But then Jasper stepped in. And I realized, maybe I'm not the only one who's tired of watching someone pretend this is normal. She turned, walking toward the barn. Where are you going? Eli asked, voice hoarse. To see if there's still anything here worth staying for. She didn't look back. But behind her, Eli didn't move. Not for a long time. And for once, the farm wasn't filled with shouting or chores or silence. It was filled with the sound of something breaking. Not bones, not tools, walls. And maybe, just maybe, that was the sound of something new beginning. The morning after Clara said no, the farm felt different. Not quieter. Quieter had always meant something bad was coming, but different. Like the house itself had exhaled after years of holding its breath. Eli hadn't spoken a word since the confrontation in the yard. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't touched a strap or muttered orders. He just wandered. From the porch to the well. From the barn to the rows of tomatoes Mama once loved. His boots dragged more than stomped. Clara stayed in the hayloft, not because she was hiding, but because it felt like the only place on the property that still belonged to her. She fed Jasper apples from the old crate near the tack room. He chewed slow, his breath warm against her palm. That morning, he didn't even nudge her for more. He just sat beside her, present, solid. Clara tucked her knees up to her chest and stared at the slats above her head, the sunlight cutting through the cracks in lines like prison bars. Then she remembered the old wardrobe in the back bedroom, the one her mother had used before everything turned to dust and duty. She hadn't opened it in 2 years. Jasper followed her halfway, pausing at the doorframe like he knew some memories weren't his to walk into. The room still smelled faintly like lavender and soap. The quilt Mama had made, the one with stars stitched across the top, lay folded on the foot of the bed. Clara ran her fingers across the fabric, feeling every seam like a heartbeat. She opened the wardrobe. Inside, buried beneath a pile of yellowing blouses, was a small cedar box. She recognized it instantly. It had once held letters, birthday cards, dried wildflowers, a photograph of Mama when she was just a girl holding a stray kitten in her lap. But now it held something else, a single envelope. Her name on the front. Clara, in her mother's handwriting, the ink slightly smudged like it had been sealed with tears. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened it slowly. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it out. That's my fault. I was too scared to leave, too loyal to what we used to be instead of what we'd become. But you, Clara, you must not stay in silence like I did. Don't inherit my prison. I see the way he looks at you now, like you're a replacement, not a child. Don't let him twist you into someone you're not. If the day comes when you have to choose between staying and surviving, choose you. If he ever becomes the kind of man a girl should fear, may God send something to stand between you. Clara couldn't breathe. Her fingers trembled as she folded the letter back up and held it against her chest. Then she walked back outside and found her father sitting on the steps, elbows on his knees, staring at the dirt like it might answer him. Without a word, she placed the letter on the step beside him and walked away. She didn't wait for him to read it. She didn't care if he tore it up. What mattered was that it was now his to carry. Later that day, as the sun dipped behind the barn, Clara returned to the porch. Eli was still sitting there. The letter was in his hands. His fingers were shaking. He didn't look up right away, but when he did, his eyes were glassy, red-rimmed. "She wrote this?" he asked hoarsely. Clara nodded. "I thought she died from fever," he said. "She died from you," Clara replied. Silence. Only the creak of the porch swing in the breeze. "She never said," Eli murmured. "She didn't have to," Clara whispered. "Neither did I." Eli wiped at his face with the back of his hand. His fingers were caked with dirt, but they couldn't scrub away the shame that clung to him. "I was just trying to keep the farm alive," he said. "No," Clara said. "You were trying to keep yourself from grieving." Jasper appeared from behind the house, his gait slow, ears alert. He walked up to Eli, paused, then gently lowered his heavy head onto the man's shoulder. It was the first time Jasper had touched him since the day he'd stepped between them. Eli let out a broken laugh. 15 years I've owned you, and now you're the one telling me what to do." Jasper didn't move, just stayed there, warm and steady. Eli reached up and placed a hand on the mule's neck. He held it there for a long time, his fingers flexing like they couldn't believe the beast hadn't flinched away. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he whispered. Clara stood beside the porch railing, her arms crossed. "Maybe not, but I deserve a father who tries to earn it." Eli's face crumpled. That night, for the first time in 2 years, he cooked. Real food. Eggs, fresh bread. Milk that hadn't been watered down. He even lit the lamp without being asked. Clara sat at the table, wary but hungry. She didn't thank him, not yet, but she didn't leave either. They ate in silence, the kind of silence that wasn't angry, just unfamiliar. Afterward, Eli surprised them both by walking out to the barn and tossing fresh hay into Jasper's stall. He patted the mule's neck again, murmuring something Clara couldn't hear. The house didn't feel like home yet. But for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like a cage either. Autumn swept over Pine Hollow like a hush over a tired church. The leaves went from scorched green to burnished red, the skies stretched wider, and the air turned crisp enough to bite. The McGraw farm, once a place of silence and shouting, had softened. Clara still woke before sunrise, but not to fetch water or face a strap. She rose because she wanted to, because Jasper waited in the barn with a low nicker and a nudge to the shoulder, and because the world felt like it might finally be worth meeting head-on. Eli no longer barked orders. He asked, not perfectly. Some days he still forgot, caught in old habits. But Clara would raise one eyebrow, and Jasper, well, Jasper didn't need words to remind Eli who he was now, and who he wasn't. That mule had become something of a legend in Pine Hollow. Word got out about what happened. Folks said they just had a feeling. Something wasn't right at the McGraw place, but nobody said it too loud. Nobody questioned it when Dr. Lydia Morris stopped by twice a week now, always with extra feed for Jasper and paint supplies for Clara. "I brought a little something," Lydia said one afternoon, handing Clara a wrapped bundle of brushes, canvas, and a small tin of watercolors. "You've got a good eye, and God knows this town could use a little beauty." Clara's hand shook slightly as she opened the gift. "Thank you for seeing me." Lydia smiled. "Your mama would have seen you too, but I think Jasper saw you first." The next morning, Clara sat on the old porch swing and watched Eli try truly try to repair the busted fence himself instead of making her do it. His movements were clumsy but focused. He no longer moved like a man trying to outrun ghosts, more like one trying to build something that could last longer than regret. Jasper lay in the shade of the oak tree, chewing lazily on a mouthful of clover. He had aged quickly in the past few months. His steps were slower now, his eyes a little glassier, but he still stood up any time someone raised their voice, still made his presence known the moment things didn't feel right. One evening, as the sky blushed orange and the first breath of winter swept through the yard, Clara found Eli sitting beside the old flower bed Mama once kept. His hands were in the soil, but this time, not from duty, from memory. "I used to think," he said, not looking at her, "that the only way to survive loss was to toughen up, to get mean. Like grief was a weight you had to press into other people to keep it from crushing you." Clara sat beside him in the dirt, not too close, but not far either. "I know," she said. "I almost lost you too," he whispered, "and it would have been my fault." She didn't say he had lost her already. She just let the words hang. That night, over supper, Eli finally said it. "If you want to go to your aunt in Little Rock, I won't stop you. I found your money. You've earned every penny and more." Clara put down her fork. "I thought I wanted to run," she said. "I thought that was the only way to stay alive, but now—" She looked out the window. "But now I want to stay if you'll keep changing." Eli met her gaze, tears catching in the corners of his eyes. "I want to be a father again, not a master." "And I want to be a daughter," Clara replied, "not a ghost." From that moment forward, they built things together. Repaired the coop, painted the barn, grew wildflowers beside the rows of vegetables Mama once loved. Not everything healed, not right away, but wounds stopped festering when there was sunlight and someone willing to look at them. And Jasper, he stayed close, though his body moved slower, and the lines around his eyes deepened. On a golden afternoon in late October, Clara found him lying under the oak tree where he'd watched her collapse all those months ago. This time, he didn't get back up. She knelt beside him, stroking the familiar curve of his neck, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Eli joined her, kneeling opposite. They buried Jasper right there beneath the oak. Clara carved the headstone herself with Lydia's tools, hands steady as she etched the words, "Here lies the mule who stood taller than any man." The next day, she hung her latest painting in the kitchen. A portrait of Jasper, his dark eyes shining, standing between the sunlight and the shadows. That winter, Clara filled page after page of a new journal, no longer hidden, no longer angry. "Healing doesn't start with forgiveness," she wrote. "It starts with choosing not to stay broken." Some nights, Clara and Eli sat on the porch together, watching the sun dip low behind the ridge where the sky turned gold and then violet. They didn't speak much. They didn't have to. There was comfort in the silence now. One evening, Eli turned to her and said, "She would have been proud of you, you know." Clara nodded. "I think she would have been proud of you, too. Eventually." They both laughed, softly, together, and in the quiet that followed, with crickets beginning to chirp and the stars blinking into place, Clara felt something she hadn't in a long, long time. Safe. Not because she was hidden or hardened or quiet, but because finally someone had chosen to listen, and because a stubborn, silent mule once stood between her and everything she feared, and gave her the space to speak at last.